What's going on, guys? It's Coach Bergman live from the HLX studios here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Producer Ted, Coach Ted Bergman. I'm on the ones and twos for the next 30 minutes or so. Thanks for joining. I'm lucky every single day that I get to come in and put on the Harvard shirt, and I'm reminded by that more in these trying times, but it's truly an honor to be a part of an organization that's taken a leadership role throughout this unique time in our society, and credit to Coach Byrne for having the foresights to be leaders in the Zoom and the digital learning space. It's a new time, it's a new method, but the knowledge and the thought process remains the same, and we're always going to continue to do our part for the lacrosse society as a whole and just continue to try to help you guys become better coaches, and in turn it helps me become a better coach to communicate myself. So thank you for being a part of this together, and let's dive into it. All right, guys, so I'm going to be talking today about a style of goaltending, a way to view the goaltending position that isn't typically taught, and it's certainly undervalued. And I call it toy soldier goaltending. So on your screen, you'll see your little toy soldier figure right now. So what do I mean when I say toy soldier goaltending? Well, the whole concept is this. You should look exactly the same when you're standing in the net, regardless of what the situation is. Whether it's a shot on the run, a shot down the alley, a time and room, a 5-and-5, a crease dive, it's irrelevant what the offense is doing. We want to be exactly the same every single time. We want to be a toy soldier. I want to be able to pick you up, that little plastic toy soldier, and then put you down in the net, and it should look exactly the same every single time. So what's the first step to having a toy soldier? An example. Notice how our goalie here is square to the ball. He's in his stance when the ball is at the top right field location. As the ball swings to the top center field location, he maintains the same exact stance. As we move across the cage this way, again, notice that his feet are the same width. His hips are at the same height. His head is at the same height, and his hands are in the same spot where they started. It's essentially like I picked up a plastic figure of our goaltender and placed him at those 3 shot locations, and it should look exactly the same every single time. So when you talk about toy soldiers, this takes me back well before I was born, but you would have to make a mold. So how do you make a mold to your toy soldier? Well, in the goaltending coaching industry, we call that mold your stance, because we're making that plastic mold that will maintain the exact same shape regardless of what the situation. So to make a proper mold for a goalie, you have to make sure that you have 3 areas remain constant: your feet, your hips, and your heads, both your physical head on your body and the head of your goalie stick. So I talk a lot about your 2 heads, your hips, and your feet always remaining the same. So like I said, your mold is essentially your stance. And now that's not going to be the same for every goalie. So if you're a coach out there and you have one goalie who's 6'4" and another goalie who's about 5'7", which happens to be the scenario that we had here at Harvard, their stance isn't going to be the same. Their feet might be wider or narrower, their hips might be higher or lower, and their hands might be slightly higher, lower, in, or more out. It's really all about comfort. There's no ideal situation that every goalie has to follow. It's all about comfort. But what's most important is that once you create your stance, it maintains consistency at all times. So again, we go back to our first example here with our goaltender, big frame, balanced. That's his stance. That's his toy soldier mold right there. His hips are pretty neutral. His knees are slightly bent. He has wider feet than some goalies may have, but his head, his physical head, and his stick head, his 2 heads always remain constant at the same exact height as we come across the cage. It's a really nice job. Well, where does this cause trouble for goalies? It causes the most trouble when the pipe comes into play, whether that's dodging down an alley, swinging the ball through X, 5-and-5s, crease dives, anytime the pipe comes into play, it causes a lot of trouble with the toy soldier goaltending idea. And that's why we created this idea that the pipe doesn't exist. The pipe essentially is a physical barrier because it is a piece of metal that is 6 feet high that is in your way as a goaltender. But more importantly than being a physical barrier, the pipe actually is a mental barrier because it limits your range of motion. It's not a magnet, but when you see goaltenders play on film a lot, it certainly looks like it is. And it looks like part of that magnet is taped to their arm or their leg. And you'll see goalies start to naturally drift into that pipe as ball carriers move away from it. That, in essence of itself, proves that the pipe does exist. We're trying to teach the idea that it doesn't exist. You should have toy soldier goaltending on the pipes. You should have the exact same stance on the pipe that you would at a time and room shot from top center at 14 yards. Why? Because we're balanced, our weight distribution is proper, our hands are loose and relaxed, and we can make a save like we would any other location on the field. So pipe play, a balanced approach. It doesn't exist. Let's have equal weight distribution. Let's maintain our toy soldier stance, and let's be calm. This is in complete and direct and intentional contradiction to the term hug your pipe. I hate the term. Hug your pipe. Not only does that recognize the existence of the pipe, but the term hug means that you're losing your own weight and you're weight bearing on another object. We think about hugging our friends or our neighbors and we're giving them a piece of our weight. They're holding something for us. We don't want to hug the pipe because then we're giving our weight to the pipe. We want to keep our weight 50-50 balanced between each feet every single time. So we don't want to hug the pipe, and we definitely don't want to be teaching goalies to lean up against the pipe. And I'm going to show you why. If you want to think of a really simple way to teach toy soldier goaltending, hip diagrams. What do you need to teach this? All you need is a pen and a piece of paper. And as you see on your screen here with the green check mark, that's a great hip diagram. That's how our hips should look when we're balanced, when we're toy soldier goaltending. That's the shape of our hips from our plastic mold. When you diagram the hips like we have with the red X's, that's what a pipe lean looks like. So if you see, going back to this slide with hugging your pipe, if I were to make a hip diagram of this goaltender right here, well, it would probably look like the diagram in the bottom left. His right leg is straight against the pipe and his left leg is at a straighter angle. If you're into yoga, which almost all good goalies are these days, this is very similar to a warrior two stance, where our weight is bearing more on our front leg, causing imbalance to our back leg. Well, it's finally time for everyone's favorite part. Let's go to the film. Go back to the film. Again, we see great balance from our goaltender, toy soldier in his stance, and we make a good save. So where do we really struggle with this? If you remember from where I was talking about during the presentation, an area that goalies really struggle with this is when the pipe comes into play. So here, we'll notice as this dodge comes down the alley, boom, right there. You see that weight transfer into our left foot? That means we're not balanced. That means our feet aren't going to be set, our hips aren't going to be at a proper height, and our weight is going to shift into an area where we don't have proper control. So we always need to have toy soldier goaltending. We need to be balanced on the pipes, and that will allow us to make saves. Here we see another example down the alley. Right here. Notice how our weight is shifted into our left foot. If I were to make a hip diagram, it would look like this. That is imbalanced goaltending. That is leaning on the pipe. That is acknowledging the pipe exists. And as we play the film, because we're imbalanced, we have to take an extra step to gather ourselves, which drops our hands and puts the ball in the cage. So we're here. Got our chat going here. And we're back. Let's look at our balance on the pipe as we come down the off-stick alley. Our balance is in our left foot, our hip diagram. would look like this. And it's going to cause our next step to be imbalanced, regardless of where it goes. If it's a feed, if it's a late turn in, it's a shot show to a skip pass. Imbalance requires us to play goalie in our unoptimal state. So when we make our stance, when we make our toy soldier, we don't want to change that depending on where we are. So when you're watching film of your goalies, focus less on where their hands are. Focus less on, oh, you were guessing. Focus less on, oh, when he's going down the alley, he might be thinking shooting off low. Let's take the focus away from the minute details of goalies, and let's just teach them the basic fundamentals of maintaining balance and maintaining consistency, because those are two areas to goaltending, balance and consistency, that are undervalued, and there's far too much attention on the detailed, minute technical pieces of the game. When we're coming down the alley, what should it properly look like if we're not going to lean on the pipe? Well, this is a great example from our scrimmage this fall, and we can see our goalie, even though the ball is going just below goal line extended, right about GLE, we can still be balanced and we can still play square. So our hips, our two heads, our physical head and our stick head, and our feet, those are the 4 points of focus, are exactly the same if our goalie was playing this shot 2 yards above goal, or if he was playing a 14-yard step down. Having that consistency allows us to be balanced, it allows our hands to be loose, and it allows us, more importantly, to be ready for the next play. When we're balanced, we can make the next step. We can face the next shot, and now we have the same exact stance for the step down that I was just talking about, with our two heads, our feet, and our hips in the exact same spot. This allows us to make a save from any shot location, whether it's off high, short stick, low, it doesn't matter. We're able to make a save. How about on the off stick side? Off stick alley is really difficult. This is a spot where you'll see a lot of goalies get magnetic and lean into that pipe. We do a great job with our balance and our discipline here, maintaining equal weight distribution. Our hip diagram looks like this right now, which is awesome. We still, even at the last second before the shot, we still maintain exceptional balance, and that allows us to make a fundamentally sound save. That's a great job. This is from X, and this is where goalies really struggle, especially at the youth and high school level. And a piece of this that needs to be talked about is that there's a human instinct. It's called fear. And unfortunately, as humans, we don't have the ability to always control those impulses. And when fear strikes, it's very difficult to overcome that emotion. So when you'll see this take place in youth goalies, when people are winding up really big and they'll shrink their knees in together, maybe here on the pipe when goalies get small and they get tight. And that's just a human survival instinct. You're trying not to get hit with a rubber ball coming at you at over 90 miles an hour. For those of you who have never had the occurrence of getting hit with a shot in the thigh, it really hurts and it really bruises. And as human beings, we want to get hit with moving objects at that speed as little as humanly possible. So because of that instinct, there's a natural reaction to shrink in the goal on big windups, or to get small and lean on the pipe. It's a reflex. I say this to our goalies here at Harvard all the time. It's a reflex. It's called a reflex because your body does it without you telling it to. It's like when you go to the doctor and they smack that hammer against your knee and your leg just kicks out. You're not telling your leg to kick out. It's a reflex. Your body does it without you telling it to. That's the same thing sometimes with goalies leaning on the pipe. It's their natural reflex. We are going to try to break that, and we don't want to lean on the pipe, and we want to be balanced on the pipe, which you'll see here on this next clip. As that ball pushes above GLE, we have the mental discipline to recognize the fear. We have the calm presence to maintain equal weight distribution. Look here, great weight distribution with our feet, the same width, our hips are at the same height, and our two heads, our physical head with our helmet and our goalie head, are at the exact same height. This allows us to be balanced. This allows us to be calm. And no matter where this shot goes, if this shot were to go short stick low, because we're balanced, we could drive off our left foot and get there. If this shot were to go short stick high, because we're balanced, we would have the ability to get both of our hands to that shot. As you'll notice as we continue to play this clip, this ball is going to go right here to the off-stick high shot location, which is an incredibly difficult save. Just imagine if our goalie here was on the pipe, taking up that tight spot, there's no chance he would have the balance or the explosiveness to get to that off-stick shot location. But because we're balanced, because we have good weight distribution, we're able to drive our hands to the ball with our hips always square. Given that the title of this novel and innovative webinar is called One Clip, One Drill, I thought I'd come at you guys with a couple drills to help teach this balance idea, especially in the two areas that goalies really struggle with this, when they're dodging down the pipe and when they're dodging from X. So when they're dodging down the alley here and it forces you to engage the pipe, this is a great drill. We start with a dodger right here at the high wing shot location. He's going to dodge down the alley, which is going to require our goalie to make that cognitive decision. Do I engage with the pipe? Do I stay balanced? Or do I shrink? So this is great goaltending here, and this is what we teach. We'll still perfectly balanced. Great weight distribution. Here's our hip diagram right here, and our 4 points of contact, our two heads, our hips, and our feet. It's a great job. As that ball swings to X, and we have to come all the way across, now we can see us do not as great of a job. Our weight has shifted into our right foot here. Our hip diagram looks something like that. And this is going to cause us to be imbalanced. So then when he makes the rocker, we're going to be late to the shot. Because our weight is imbalanced so early on our right foot right there, this is our hip diagram. As the shot continues, that transfer of the weight from here to the center, that's all a great shooter needs to bury the ball in the low corner there. Same thing. And this drill is just continuous. Not only is this a great drill for the goalies, this is a great drill for offensive players as well, because they're forced to make these passes, to dodge, to bear in here. Notice that you'll see Coach Hutchinson and Coach Corrigan. We're really lucky to have two just exceptional offensive coordinators, great minds of the game. They're always teaching our guys to bear in, to draw this pipe defenseman right here. So by this dodger initiating and using his body language to show the defense and the goalie that he's going to engage, that could draw this pipe defenseman to come up. And as we roll it, that's what's going to initiate the look through X to the backside. Coach Byrne always calls this a throw. So as the first throw happens and our goalies react, my first instinct as a coach is to watch this next step. I want to see this balance there. This isn't perfect, but it's not horrible. The hip diagram, if I had to draw it, would be a little off center there. It looks like our weight is shifted a little bit into our right foot, which I don't love. But we're still able to make a save. I'm going to jump here to the end. We do a really good job here with our goaltender in this drill at the end here. First question that just came in, is the foot inside the cage or outside the cage? And that's a great question. So I like to keep the right foot, the pipe foot, just about an inch outside of the cage. Why? Because that in and of itself limits the idea or limits the availability of that pipe to lean on. So just by putting yourself physically slightly outside of the cage, it limits your ability to follow that instinct to lean on the pipe because it's not there. I find that when goalies put their foot right up against the pipe right here, they get fixated on that. That's that mental construct. That's that physical barrier and mental barrier that I'm talking about. So when your foot is locked in on that inside pipe, if there's a shot that goes to your stick side hip, instead of stepping outside of the goal and calmly making that stick side hip save like you would if the shot was coming at you from 16 or 14 yards, you're going to have that natural instinct to just get tight to the pipe and try to hug your body in tight. And we don't like that. We should make saves the exact same way everywhere on the field, regardless of if it's at 5-5 or if it's at top center. So for that reason, I keep the foot just outside, about 1 or 2 inches outside of the goal. So this is our goalie here, the 6'4", larger frame, does a great job with his balance. Notice how this shooter is at 2 yards, but our goalie, he hasn't changed his stance at all. This is great balance. He's still covering the exact same amount of net there as he's covering here. And as a shooter, there's not much there to shoot at And anytime you see goalies taking a ton of steps or moving left to right, right to left, up and down really quickly, that's a tell for you that this guy's not really balanced. I could do a leaner. I could do a Canadian cross-face finish. I could look down and shoot up. Great shooters read goalies' body language. Next question that just came in. Is this a drill? Do you ever have offensive players shoot to keep the goalie honest? That's another great question, and we do. We actually have a separate drill. We call it triangle shooting, and that's exactly this drill. So I'll draw up triangle shooting right here. I have a cone right here. I have a cone right here. And I have a cone right here. So you can either shoot from this location, you can dodge and throw a skip pass to this location, or you can throw for the question mark, which is exactly what we're doing right here. So again, I call it triangle shooting. I have a cone here, and a cone at X. I'll have one coach, which is typically me here as the goalie, shooter, dodger. I'll have another shooter at that top right shot location, and I'll have another player with a short stick here at X to initiate that throw transfer. Another question that just came in, how do I teach recovery steps from one pipe to the other? Again, a solid question that is at the fundamental of what a lot of goalies call cross-crease turns. Cross-crease turns, turning from one pipe to the other. My focus is always much less on the exact details of the steps getting there, and it's much more on the emphasis of being balanced once you arrive. And that takes back to the principle of this presentation, is that I want to shift the focus of goalies, especially at the youth and high school levels, away from the details of your foot goes here, your hand goes here, you're at this spot on the arc. I'm less worried with those minute details, and I'm much more cognizant of, is my goalie balanced? Does he look the same at the pipe that he does when the ball is top center? Do we have equal weight distribution? But just a reminder, like anywhere else in your life, your big toe leads you to where you're going to go. So if you're going to walk down the street to the supermarket, your big toe is ultimately going to lead you there. So that's how I teach steps from one pipe to the other. Get your big toe there first, your legs, your hips, I promise they'll follow. We're going to move on to our last drill here, which is the second area where people tend to struggle more with pipe balance, and that's from X. So these 5 and 5s are a great drill. You can see me here back when it was nice and sunny at Harvard Stadium. Fun fact, Harvard Stadium, built in 1903, is the largest structure continuously used for sports made out of concrete in the United States of America, and is also one of 3 stadiums in the whole country that is a National Historic Landmark. For those of you out there in the chat, can you guess the other 2 stadiums that are National Historic Landmarks? Harvard Stadium is one of them. As we move up here on the pipe, you'll see me standing right at 5 and 5, staring right at the goalie, because I am hyper-focused on his pipe foot here. All of my focus is right here on that right foot on the pipe. Are we leaning? Are our hips square in this hip diagram? This is a great job by our goaltender staying balanced. Notice that we're balanced here on the pipe, no lean. As we get to 5 and 5, still balanced. This is phenomenal goaltending. And it's so funny, I always joke with my goalies here at Harvard that I can tell you if it's going to be a save 2 or 3 seconds before the shot even happens. And I'd say probably with 85 to 90% success, it's true. I could tell you this was going to be a save before he even shot it. Because when you're a goalie of this size, with this amount of skill, if you're balanced and you're calm, your instincts are going to take over. Your reflexes are going to take over. Are there any tips or cues to keep goalies ready throughout the possession? That's a good question, Coach Petey. I really like to focus on the breath. I think utilizing the breath is an incredibly beneficial way to keep goalies ready throughout the possession. I've picked up this tip through my practice of yoga. I think I've learned more to help teach the goaltender position through yoga than I have through any other outlet. And that's just because it requires a mindfulness to keep you mentally checked in for up to an hour, 15 minutes when you're drenched in sweat. And it's just having the mental capacity to focus on the air and the breath moving through your nasal stream. Having that ability translates well to goalies to staying ready. So if you have a goalie who tends to check out, sometimes he's in, sometimes he's out, man, he's having a great day and a bad day, try to get them to focus on their breath. I found it to be really helpful. I also like to utilize the breath to help goalies stay calm during shots. So I've gotten a lot of questions throughout my coaching career. How do I stay calm when a huge player is winding up and I get scared? How do I stay calm when the best player on the other team is at 5-5 jumping at me? How do I stay calm? And my answer is always the same. Take an inhale when the shooter is winding up, and then exhale when you're going to make a save. We're super lucky to have a state-of-the-art strength and conditioning program here at Harvard, and our guys always talk about inhale when you're bench pressing, you inhale when you're coming down, and you exhale when you're coming up with the bench. Linking movements to your breath is proven through yoga, through lifting, through exercise. Linking motion and breath is efficient, and it's very effective. So utilizing your breath to keep goalies ready throughout the possession and throughout individual shots has been really helpful. One more example here, coming from X. Great balance on the pipe. Look at this. This is a perfect example here because this is the exact same stance, toy soldier stance that we'll see with this goaltender all the time on film. To go back to a question I fielded earlier, notice that our foot right here is about 1 inch outside the pipe. We're not taking up too much space. We're not standing 2 feet out of the goal, but we're also not locked in there with our foot locked right here on the pipe. We're nice and balanced, no leaning at all, great weight distribution between our hips. Look at that. It happens again, a save. When you notice great balance and you notice great skill, you're going to see a lot of saves. I haven't looked at this film in a long time. I promise. I did not know those two were going to be saves. But when you have great balance and you have great weight distribution, this allows you to make awesome saves. Calm feet lead to true hands. True hands lead to quick hands. And when you have calm feet, true hands, and quick hands, you're going to make a heck of a lot of saves. Diving back into the Zoom chat here for our first ever trivia question of the day. There are 3 stadiums in the United States of America that are designated as National Historic Landmarks. Harvard Stadium is one of them. Can you name the other 2? Soldier Field, incorrect. Yankee Stadium, incorrect. Franklin Field, incorrect. And finally, Wrigley Field, incorrect. Andrews Field at Wesleyan University also is not a National Historic Landmark, but I've had some pretty great memories there myself. The other 2 stadiums in the country that are National Historic Landmarks are the Yale Bowl and the Rose Bowl. But we are super fortunate here at Harvard to have a beautiful facility that we get to practice in every single day. So if you have any more questions about the goaltending position, about playing shots from the alley, playing shots from X, any drills that you want me to go over, now would be a great time to start sending them into the chat, and I can get going on those. And it looks like we just had another question here. So first question that we see here. I have a new goalie, and I want to teach him the proper way to set up into a stance. Could you please go over that? Sure, absolutely. So I'm going to use a clip to help me explain this. So I guess I could have been clear when I said to each his own, or to each her own, because women play goalie at a very high level as well. You want to get your feet about a hip's width apart from each other. But what's most important is that it feels natural. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect hip width. For some, it might be comfortable to be a little wider, a little narrower. I, as a goalie, like to point my toes out a little bit wider than others. But give or take, hip distance apart is perfect for goalies. Hip level, nice, calm, bent knees. We don't want any lean. We want our hands with bent elbows, not too far out and not too far in, just nice and calm, like you were catching a football. I always do that drill with our goalies, just throw a football at them and have them catch it. Get 2 hands to the ball, so you want your hands nice and relaxed. And for placement on the stick, 1 at the top, and then if you're going to hold the stick straight down your arm, you're going to want to grab the other hand right about your elbow. So that distance between your hand and your elbow, that stick width, that's that tends to be a great distance. So feet roughly around hip width, slightly bent knees, hands calm, loose, and relaxed, and your hands about elbow width apart on your shaft. Do we have any more questions that anybody wants to throw in right now? All right, so just to recap before we finish off here, this idea of toy soldier goaltending. It's a concept that I think is applicable at any level, and it's just about maintaining calm and maintaining consistent throughout the life of a possession. Here at Harvard, we talk about the life of a possession a lot, the life of a clear, the life of a face-off, the life of a dodge. Well, I like to talk about the life of a possession from a goaltender's perspective, and it should look exactly the same throughout the entire life of a possession. Making your mold. That speaks to the question that I just answered here at the end about how to make your stance. You want your two heads, your physical head and your stick head, your hips and your feet to always remain constant. Those are my 4 points of coaching. Your two heads, your hips, and your feet. Pipe play. Let's not lean on the pipe, guys and girls. The pipe doesn't exist. It's a physical barrier that most often than not turns into a mental barrier for us, and we end up getting so fixated on one piece of metal that we forget that our job is to keep the ball out of a 6x6 frame. So keeping the ball out of the net is always our goal, and we can most effectively and efficiently keep the ball out of the net by being balanced, by being athletic, and by being calm. Let's always have that toy soldier stance. Let's always remain calm, and we're going to make a lot of saves. There's no more questions here? Oh, nice. Got a question from Noah Lynn here. Can you talk about playing the dive? Wondering about the adjustment with college coming up. Noah Lynn, shout out. Going to my alma mater, Wesleyan University. Yeah, the dive's been really interesting, and as a fan of the game, I think it's really exciting. I think it's great for the sport. As a goalie, I know this might be on brand, you could say, but I play it the same way that I would play any other shot. The last thing you want to do is have any sort of tail. You certainly don't want to end up leaning on the pipe. So for the dive specifically, Noah, you want to think about where the stick head is going to finish, not where the stick head is going to start. So when you're making your move onto the shooter, don't throw your body at where the stick head currently is, because by nature of diving, you're going to be going a distance. The shooter's arms will be extended. The stick will end up finishing much farther away from where it started. One of my favorite quotes that I've heard in the sport of lacrosse is, "You're never as open as you are when you pause the film." I love that quote. So when you're watching film and you pause it and you're like, look how much space this guy has. Well, you're never as open as you are when you pause the film. And it's the same thing for a dive. That stick is never as close as it is when he starts the dive. So anytime someone's going to dive on you, you don't want to step towards where the stick currently is. You want to try to meet that stick head where it will finish. So I hope that answered that question. It's more of a horizontal step than a vertical step. Last question here from Charles and on his iPad. What warm-up sequencing? Warming up, simple. I don't try to rewrite the book on that. Shoot them high, shoot them middle, shoot them low, get the goalie warm. But something I really put an emphasis on is stretching your hips. Again, I take that through my yoga practice, but having loose and flexible hips can do a lot for goaltending. I've done a few podcasts that are available on our YouTube channel, HLX1881, where I really dive into hip flexibility, and I really, really preach and believe in stretching your hips. So I incorporate hip stretching into all of my warm-ups. TB8, are you still teaching bottom hand to the ball? 100% I'm still teaching bottom hand to the ball, baby. I will go to the grave with bottom hand technique. Bottom hand technique is so important because it always keeps your hips square to the ball. Think about an off-stick hip shot location. Off-stick hip shot location here. If I open up my hips like this, my hips are square to the sideline, and if I miss that ball with the stick head, it's going to go in the back of the net right here. That's why we teach the bottom hand technique, where the bottom hand gets out and away from your body, and it keeps my hips always upfield. Again, I dive really deep into the bottom hand technique on the first podcast, the TB8 method. It's on our YouTube channel under podcast. You'll see some great podcasts from Coach Byrne, Coach Hutchinson, and Coach Corrigan, who are just masters of the craft at this point. So make sure you guys check out that playlist. It's under podcasts and interviews on our YouTube channel, HLX1881. Strathaven Panthers represent. Thank you for that. Thank you for that comment. I'm always reminded about all of the people who have helped me, and I certainly remember my days in Media, Pennsylvania, and I think fondly of all of those who have helped me get to where I am today. Last question here. Ted, where are the goalie's feet in relationship to the snow cone when a guy looks to dive with your goalies above it? Yeah, the ice cream cone is unique, and I really think it adds a new element to the goaltending position that is novel for all of us. So I graduated from college in 2017, and I had a very, very brief stint in the Major League Lacrosse League. And no matter what league I was playing in, there was never an ice cream cone. So I don't have the personal experience to speak to how I would play it personally. But what I can assure you is that it plays a role in a goalie's mentality and in their psychology because they see an arc right below their feet. So I would like to say don't think about it, but the ice cream cone is much farther out than any goalie should be playing. Even a goalie who plays the quote unquote high arc, they'll still be slightly inside of that ice cream cone. It's much too far out of the goal to really be used as a walking arc. So in relation to the ice cream cone, when a guy's looking to dive, again, when people are diving, have them take more of a horizontal step. You want to meet that stick head and that stick where it's going to be, not where it currently is. The stick head is never as close as it is when you pause the film. And I just want to take a second to thank all of you guys for joining us here. I have been really fortunate to be able to compete at an incredibly high level in the squash court with all of our staff here at Harvard. And I think the best thing that we've all learned from that is we never get rattled. And that only and most explicitly applies to the goaltending position. We never get rattled. Every time we get scored on, we approach the next shot like it's the first shot that we've seen today. It doesn't matter whether it's a scrimmage in the fall or the national championship game. Every single shot's the same, and we're going to approach it that way every single time. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you guys soon.